Okay, this is just the basics of trigonometric ratios. I'm just going to run through sine, cosine, and tangent really quick. Just so you know, before we start, sine, cosine, and tangent are trig ratios that we use to solve for missing sides of triangles, and we can use the inverse functions to solve for missing angles of triangles. But right now we're going to focus on just sine, cosine, and tangent. Sine is the ratio of the opposite side of an angle that you're talking about over its hypotenuse of the triangle. Cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and tangent is the opposite side over the adjacent side. And we've got this little saying that you might have heard before. It's called SOHCAHTOA, and an easy way to remember that is some old hippie caught another hippie tripping on acid. It's something that I kind of use to remind myself how to spell SOHCAHTOA, and now that I've got SOHCAHTOA, I can see that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, SOH, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent, TOA. So using the word SOHCAHTOA, I'm able to memorize my trigonometric ratios. I've got this diagram over here to show you exactly how this is set up with sine, cosine, and tangent. So let's just assume that we're talking about the angle x here. If I want to figure out how to set up a ratio so that I have sine of x, I'm going to have sine of x is equal to its opposite, and the side that's opposite of the angle that you're discussing is the side that's on the opposite side of the triangle, which in this case would be A. So I'm going to label this as my opposite side. The side that's touching the angle but not the hypotenuse would be considered the adjacent side. So B forms part of the leg of the angle x, or angle A in this case. So that's the side that's adjacent to angle x. And C, since it's the longest side of my triangle and across from the 90-degree angle, would be considered my hypotenuse. So I'm going to label this as my adjacent side, and then I'm going to label my C as my hypotenuse. So when I'm setting up sine of x, I need to know that sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So sine of x would be, in this case, A over C. Cosine of x would be the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. So I need to look at the adjacent side to x, which would be B over the hypotenuse, which is C. And then tan of x would be opposite over adjacent. So I'm going to look for the opposite side of x, which would be A, and then the adjacent side, which would be B. So in this case, the ratio would be A over B. And that's your basics of sine, cosine, and tangent. Be sure to watch my other video where I actually show you how this applies to a real problem. We'll solve for a missing side of a triangle, and that way you understand how to use sine, cosine, and tangent and solve for those missing sides.